All right, 9 minutes gone past the hour of 4, and it's time for us to shift the conversations forward, or should I say push the conversation forward. And our topic for the hour, the new service chiefs. And I've got a guest over the phone. I'll introduce him shortly, not without first of all running through some quick introduction. Now, the President Bola Tinubu has appointed new service chiefs, with the NSA being Nuhu Ribadu. Now, the change of guard may not be unconnected with the insecurity situation in the country. Now, the Vanguard reports that 325 persons have been killed and 150 people kidnapped between May 29 and June 8. The article further states that about 98,083 people have been killed in 12 years preceding the emergence of Tinubu's presidency. You also would have heard that a Kogi monarch and his wife were kidnapped recently. And of course, you also know about the story of Okorocha's attempted assassination, where a policeman was said to have died. Now, before the emergence of the likes of Lieutenant General Farouk Yahya, the outgone Chief of Army Staff, we had the likes of Lieutenant General Buratai, who Nigerians at the time were calling for their change because they felt like, a change would affect the security architecture of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Looking at the outgone service chiefs, did that change at the time really impact the security architecture? These and many more we will talk about. I'm going to introduce my guest now. He's a security expert. And I have on the phone Ife Wanogho. Good evening to you. Welcome on the show.
Good evening, Kalada. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure
to be on the show.
All right. It's good to have you. So to the very first question, now we have a change of guard. The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has changed the service chiefs. Let's start from the outgone service chiefs. How would you rate their performances, given that they were brought in at a time when Nigerians and a lot of leaders, even National Assembly at the time, the 9th National Assembly, were calling for a change of service chiefs? So how would you rate their performances?
Well, I would say that the immediate past service chiefs, starting from the Chief of Defense Staff General Lucky Rabo, and then Chief of Army Staff, who was Yahaya, and the others. That said, I think they made some marginal impact. They were able to reduce the incidents of banditry across the Northwest, and then parts of the Northeast. They continued the theater command against Boko Haram, and they made some very good moves there. But I think it's still marginal, if you speak. But if you now go back a little further back to Chiko Buratai and his likes, I would say that there wasn't much positive out from that category of service chiefs, because we had a situation where it became accepted, that things were going to go wrong. It became the norm. In fact, it was in that period, while they held sway as service chiefs, that we had the metamorphosis from the Boko Haram and ISWAP insurgency in the Northeast to the banditry in the Northeast. And the Abuja-Kaduna Road, the kidnapping incidents, the train attack, and what have you, became very a sore point in that administration. So I think they did not do very much. The initial time when they were appointed, I remember how people were making certain comments like "Go hard on Buratai" and the likes. They came in with so much expectation, but sooner than later it became business as usual, because it was clear that nothing really was being done. It was same old same in the manner of speaking, wherein you heard the same complaints from the soldiers who were in the front, who were in the war front, who were prosecuting the battle, with regards to their welfare, with regards to lack of adequate, weaponry, firearms, ammunition, and what have you, superior firepower from the criminals, sometimes deficiency in the plans that they have. Sometimes you hear that they were just called off a particular position for no reason, and then you find out there was an attack. So I think there has been, it started high, they ended up poorly, but when Yahaya came and took over from Buratai, he did basically, he improved the lot, I think. So he reduced the frequency of those incidents in the north. And then it remains to be seen what is going to happen with the new people who have come on board.
So we can then argue that a change of guard over a period of time can have a positive impact on the security architecture, right? We can argue that.
Oh, no, absolutely, it can. But I think you want to tie that in to the appointing officer, in this case, the commander-in-chief, of course, and to the mindset of the commanding officer. What he is willing to accept as okay, what he's ready to live with, and what he is not.
Okay.
For me, his security is very regimented, so much so that if the appointing officer gives his marching orders and he gives his terms of reference to those he has appointed, he knows when they punch below the belt. He knows when they perform poorly. And he can say that, okay, I expected XYZ and I did not find that. So therefore, you cannot continue to remain in office. There could be consequences for criminal negligence or criminal complicity, if you like. But he also knows when he says, okay, yes, they've done well. So it's a function of what constitutes mediocrity to the commander-in-chief. Right. When the commander-in-chief decides that all is going well, I think it's basically how he is able to push those he has appointed. That determines their performance, really.
So if I should go by what you've said now, the commander-in-chief, can we then blame the former president, for the failure, and not necessarily the service chiefs, even going as far back as Buratai? Can we blame the commander-in-chief, the former commander-in-chief?
Absolutely. In fact, for me, the buck stopped on his table. He stopped on his table because he was the commander-in-chief. He appointed the people into office. He was the one who swore an oath, to protect the security and welfare of Nigerians. And one problem I think he had, he was known to be too trusting of those he put in office. And it's very difficult for him to even effect a change. Remember that Buratai and his set of colleagues, they were in office even beyond their legitimate period of service.
Right.
They have done more than 35 years. They have done more than 60 years of age. But the president left them in office. So yes, you would want to, if the commander-in-chief decides that you must do better, more often than not, those people who are chiefs, they get to do better because they know that the commanding officer, the appointing officer will not accept anything less. But where the appointing officer believes that there's not much you can do, you have done well, I think we'll get what we get, basically, and that's what we had with the likes of Buratai, so much so that it became a norm. There was nothing happening. Things were not changing. At a point in time, President Buhari was in one security meeting after another security meeting, and yet it was difficult to find out what was changing.
Okay, but if we argue that the likes of Lieutenant General Yahya, him and his colleagues did improve the security architecture a little bit, do you think they could have allowed them to stay a little bit longer? Maybe a difference could have been made. Maybe more improvements could have been experienced. Do you agree with that argument?
Yeah, it's hypothetical, and yes, it is possible. You could argue for and against that particular concept. So we've come to have a convention in Nigeria. When you have a new president and commander-in-chief, the tendency is that he has to appoint his own people who he would consider to be loyal to him, and then they will be able to interpret what he actually wants security-wise for the country, and then proceed to execute the will of the president. So yes, that is arguable. But for me, professionally speaking, I believe that we must mature to a point where the exit of the president, the change in guards at the presidency, should not necessarily imply change in guards for service chiefs, except they have given their all, or in a situation where they have performed below par, and then there is need for them to go and face some investigation, or they should leave office to create room for better people. Other than that, we must mature to that point, where we don't have to lose commander-in-chief and lose service chiefs because we lost the president, because we changed the president. We must get to that point. So that the military and the security agencies must be professionally driven. They must be put in such a position that people can also, it's also a career, you understand?
Yeah.
So if somebody who is doing a 4-year or an 8-year tenure is leaving office, why should somebody who has a career of 35 years and has barely done 35 years make to leave office? So for me, I think that has to change, really, going forward.
Talking about, change of guard at the presidency and then change of guard at the service chiefs positions, does this affect the number of, how do I put it now? Now, experience matters when we're talking the military, when we're talking, the army, the navy, the air force, right? And if we keep changing every 8 years and we say that we don't have enough personnel when it comes to the military, is this not going to affect the force, so to say?
Like I said in the previous question, you could also argue for and against this, and I think it's going to affect the force somewhat, if you ask me, because professionally speaking, you don't want to just lose people that you have given all manner of training. Some of them have been theater commanders, they've had foreign military trainings, they've had peace missions that they have led, outside the country, and they have done so very much. So for you to not just change them, that's the problem. But the other argument that some people want to also prefer and push forward is that most of these agencies, the police and the military, they are top heavy. It's saturated at the top.
Okay.
So you have many people and some of them are just redundant. So to that extent, they say it gives room for such positions to go around, Also for the geopolitics that you have in the country, people will now get represented. When the government goes, the same way you're trying to rotate the presidency to have a sense of belonging for all Nigerians, people believe that it's also a very good thing for you to also have other people who also hold service chief positions like chief of army staff, chief of air staff, and chief of defense staff, and what have you. So it depends on how we look at it, but we must indeed go beyond this particular point that we are in now. And yes, we must take professionalism and training into cognizance. We cannot invest so much in the lives, in the career of our servicemen, and then because the president has to leave office, we now boot them out. I think that's something that really has to change.
All right, Mr. Wanogho, now let's talk about you just talked about rotating, the service chiefs. The president has appointed National Security Advisor to be Nuhu Ribadu. It's very popular in the political sphere, and of course, he was once the FCC chair. We also have Chief of Defense Staff Major General C.G. Musa is from Southern Kaduna. We have the Chief of Army Staff, Major General T.A. Lagbaja. We've got Chief of Naval Staff, Rear Admiral E.I. Ogala. He's from the southeast. We've got Chief of Air Staff, Air Vice Marshal H.B. Abubakar is from Bauchi State. That's the northeast. Correct me if I'm wrong. And we've got Chief of Defense Intelligence, Major General Ekpa, who's from the south. And of course, DIG Egwe Tokun, who is the Acting Inspector General, and he's from the southwest. Now, the question is, talking about rotating, unlike the previous administration, does this spread to all of the geopolitical zones? Although I did not see the North Central in that lineup, but does this see that federal character, that rotational argument?
Oh, absolutely. This is a huge improvement on what President Buhari did. Yes, like you mentioned, the North Central may be lacking at this time, but I believe they're not done. You still have the intelligence agencies, you still have one or two other military or paramilitary, you have the NSCDC, you have immigration, you have the DSS, you have the NIA. So as far as this is what President Tinubu has done compared to Buhari, Tinubu is miles ahead because one, you can see that you have some sort of balance in terms of Christians and Muslims, and you also have the South covered, and you have the North covered. Unlike the time when President Buhari appointed the service chiefs, you could literally have a Security Council meeting and Hausa is the language of the day. But this appears much more Nigerian. It's much more representative of the diverse cultural heritage of Nigeria. You have somebody who is an Igbo person, you have Yoruba people, you have Hausa Fulani people, and I think that's what South Africa. This is the way to go, really. It could get better, but this is the way to go. Particularly because we have had a very divisive country and administration in the last few years. So you need to create that sense of belonging from different parts of the country. But over time, these things will count less.
Sorry, does this affect the security architecture in any way? I mean, this one from southeast, that one from southwest, northeast, northwest. Does it affect, the security architecture in any way?
Well, I think it's just the optics, really. It's the optics. When the chips are down, what counts really is the marching orders. What is the operational order on chief? And then the north is
to thrive in a fast
still on the line. Greetings to you, if you want to go. Good evening to you. Welcome on the show once again.
Good evening, Kalada. Thank you for having me.
All right. So we were talking about the service chiefs, and before we went on break, we were talking about this. Almost all the political zones and the service chiefs and appointed by the president, the national security advisor. There are conversations surrounding Ribadu's appointment. He was, AIG at some point, a police officer, and to, Bache was done. That was done. I think on Shonokon, it was also done. But what do you make of these arguments? Ribadu as the national security advisor.
Okay, I think it was a good call of the president. Much as I have my reservations as to the government of the day, but I think it was a good call. What we've had over time and the tendency for us to believe that the NSA position should be the exclusive preserve of members of military, and particularly the army, which is considered the senior of the armed forces, I think is actually a misnomer. A national security advisor should, in the true sense of the term, be a national security advisor. He need not necessarily have security background, even not to talk about streamlining him to the armed forces. So you need somebody who has some level of top-notch experience in diverse fields. You need somebody who's a critical thinker, right? Yeah. It's a plus if he has security experience, because we've had cases, agencies, places like the US that will try to fashion our democracy after. They've had NSAs, they've even had CIA directors who have been non-security, non-military, non-intelligence background. And they appoint them. And they do very well in office. Because they are there to advise. They even have a fresh pair of eyes to look at things. They are not bogged down by, this is how we've been doing it, we must continue. So that complacency doesn't exist with them. So I don't know, I've not been able to go through the NSA Act, because I believe there's some provision there, and the president must have gone through that and taken a decision. But for me, deciding that you must get a military person to hold that office is a misnomer, really. And for those who argue, how can somebody who has not been a military man be respected by military men? The same way the military submits itself to civil authority under the president, who has never been a military person, but is commander-in-chief. And whoever the president appoints as the NSA is an agent of the president. So he acts for the president. You have no option than to listen and obey, and to respect the person. It's the office, in fact, that you respect, not necessarily the individual. The individual that just brings the office to life and tries to get the wishes of the president done. So for me, we shouldn't dwell on that. And I think it's very good. In fact, I'm one of those who have been championing the cause for people who are professionals, who are global citizens, to be appointed as NSAs. They don't have to be people who have been bogged down by the limitations that we have for our military and our security agencies. I think Ribadu is a proper fit for that office.
So when you say proper fit, are you expecting him to replicate his time as the FCC chairman, where it is believed that he went after the untouchables, in terms of the fight against corruption? Are you expecting such in, the office of the NSA? Yeah. So what I expect is something similar, but more specifically, by its nature, except he changes overnight. Somebody who will not accept status quo. Okay.
That's the kind of person we need. So we've had, for instance, I've argued elsewhere in different fora, that the last NSA we have, Babagana Mungono, for me should have been fired long ago. I argued, I even wrote about that while he was still in office. Because we were not making progress, and the man was there. It's one of the people that remained in office all through President Buhari's tenure. And it's not okay. You need somebody who cannot accept status quo. You cannot tell him, for instance, that you have liberated a particular area, and then there was Boko Haram attacks there, and then there's ISWAP attack there. If you tell me, for instance, that these people are attacking because they have been embedded with the civil population, what have you done with the intelligence agencies that you have? How far have you infiltrated these cells? What have you done to neutralize them? We have professionals who are ready to do the job. So it means that you don't know what you are doing, except, of course, we've not turned our war against terror into sort of franchise to empower our friends for contracting and what have you, to make money. Because it cannot be an endless war. That's the point I'm trying to make.
All right.
If you say they are coming from outside the borders of Nigeria, so you need somebody who will not accept that this will continue. When you get into office, for me, and if I were to be one of the service chiefs, and the NSA, you must draw a Marshall Plan. You must put your terms of reference. What is the minimum you would accept? So you cannot be a service chief and then month after month you are prosecuting the same war in the same area. And it's not conventional warfare. So you don't have a standing army fighting against you. You have the support of the international security agencies with you. You have Interpol with you. You have the entire country behind you. You have the military. So your resources are almost unmatched. And then you allow some ragtag group to make you to continue to fight, and you kill Nigerian soldiers are losing their lives. Money is being spent. We're not getting any headway. No. So you need somebody who thinks out of the box and somebody who does not accept mediocrity. And I think for me, Ribadu is that kind of person. He will not be in office and you tell me that there was an attack today, attack tomorrow, attack next tomorrow. What have you done about it? What have you done to prevent it?
All right.
Beyond reactionary actions that you take, what have you done to ensure that it does not recur? So I think it's a proper fit.
Okay, now talking about the qualifications of the service chiefs, from when you look at them, they have quality educational background. Like I'm looking at the IG, the acting IG. It's got a degree in engineering. Where is it now? Yes, it's got a master's degree in engineering analysis. It's got some other degrees. When you look at the other ones too, they have degrees in different intelligence courses. They have won several awards. They have been deployed to several, very important positions in time past. How do you see these, how do I put it now? Their portfolio, or would I say their CV, their resume? How do you see all of these come into play in our current security situation where we're trying to get rid of ISWAP, Boko Haram, bandits, and even some criminal elements in the southeast? Okay,
so I do think that their degrees are good. Their trainings are good. Trainings are much better. Degrees are complementary because they can measure up shoulder to shoulder with their peers around the world, because they will go for international conferences, right?
Okay.
They will have joint activities with the military from other countries, police from other countries, different parts of the world. So it makes sense for you to be up to speed in that regard. But it makes more sense for you to be well grounded in what you actually do, in the practice of security, in the practice of counterinsurgency, in the practice of counterintelligence, in the practice of whatever you need to do to regulate law and order in the proper sense. It makes proper sense to be well grounded. And the modern techniques of policing, for instance, modern techniques of urban warfare. So it makes absolute sense. Just to talk about this issue of degree and qualifications, we had Robert Mugabe, who was touted to be the most educated president we've had in these parts. Also started very well, was motivated, was seen to be an independent person for Zimbabwe. And then what did he turn out to? It became a thorn in the flesh of Zimbabweans who elected him, in spite of his many degrees, higher degrees, doctorate degrees and what have you. So for me, you could also have people with so much degrees, but they do very little.
All right.
But it is proper for you to have the minimum standards and minimum requirements. And I think, yes, they all do meet the standard. They've had the requisite trainings. They've gone through the educational experiences. By the way, even if they do not have any degree, anybody who went through the NDA is as good as a university graduate. In fact, if not even stronger and much more exposed, because they have all kinds of teachings in the NDA, all kinds of exposure, in the NDA. So that itself is not a limitation. So for me, I think it's positive, yes. But what counts the more is attitude to work, is your ability to deliver. Because if somebody has all the education, all the qualification, but if the person's moral fiber is questionable, if he's going to look the other way and take money, whereas the country is up in flames, then there is a problem. So you need people who, beyond the degrees and qualifications they have, they are ready to stamp their name in gold. They are ready to make some difference, so that it will be said that while I was in office, we were able to definitively put an end to this. Like many Nigerians will say, terrorism doesn't really stop. America is still fighting terrorism. And I asked, since 9/11, how many other foreign terrorist attacks have you had in the United States of America beyond lone wolf issues, which they also respond and track? How many have you had? Because they've decided to look. That's what the approach we should have.
All right.
And it's key. We must stop accepting mediocrity.
Now, I've got two more questions for you, and then I'll have to let you go. And one of them has to do with, mediocrity, like you've mentioned. But that will come last. But for now, talking about the IGP, for about, would I say, 2-3 past IGPs, their tenure has been a cause of concern. One, maybe they're past the age they're supposed to be in office, or there's something about it. Now, this one that has been appointed as acting IGP, it is reported, as seen in some of the pages of newspapers, that he has got 1 year to be in office or to be a police officer, and he would have to retire. But what does this continuous change, I want to use that word because sometimes you have them spending 1 year, 2 years, and less than 4 years. Does this continuous change in office affect policing in Nigeria, given that we are so key on making certain adjustments to policing in Nigeria?
Absolutely. I want to align very vigorously, with those who believe that this change is not too good. We've seen cases where we've had IGPs. I remember there was this IGP, I don't know whether it was Wanogho, who was it now, who came with the mantra of to serve and protect with integrity. You have others who have come with the fire for fire mantra. Even at the state level, some commissioners of police have their own mantra. You understand? So for me, an IGP who is in office and has barely served his time, and then you change him. This person comes for some political considerations or even for pecuniary considerations. He has another agenda, just like the presidents used to have their agenda, 7-point agenda, what good people, great, all kinds of things you have. So for me, it's proper in appointing IGPs, factor in issues of length of service, how much time does he have to truly do what he needs to do. And let's say he's doing the proper thing, will I allow him to finish his tenure, to do well if he's doing well? Because they say, like in football, you don't change the winning team. You understand? So the issue of changing IGPs, security, we touched this at the beginning. We touched on this at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because the commander-in-chief has changed. It's something we have to focus on. The other thing too, extending somebody's time in office. Simply because you say it's the person you trust, you are breaking the law. Because it is clear in our extant public service rules or civil service rules. If they say it is 35 years in service or 60 years of age, whichever comes first, you have to abide by it. You don't go and change the law because you are the commander-in-chief and somebody has served out his time. You still keep him in office. That's not done. And I like very much that we've gone back in customs, for instance. Now you have a customs officer heading the customs again.
Yeah.
President Buhari had to go get a retired military officer to head the customs.
Yeah.
When President Obasanjo came in then, he got a retired colonel to head the DSS. This kind of aberrations should stop. If you want anybody to head, then go look at the act establishing it. Because it does something also in terms of, what do you call it now, to disincentivize those people who are in service, right? Because everybody who is in service, who does very well, is hoping to get to the highest office possible. And then you bring somebody from another agency to come and superintend over him, he's not going to give his best because the thinking is that somebody is going to brush from elsewhere. Why should I even do what I have to do when there are no proper rewards in our system? You understand? So these are things that would have to be looked at. And I do hope that whether President Tinubu, or that is if the courts say he should remain in office, or any other president that would come, they must be able to think properly about the health of the country, the security health of the country, and not just for political expediency. Who you are putting in office, yes, you want someone who is loyal, but the most important is loyalty to the country, to the sovereignty of the country, not loyalty to somebody's whims and caprices. Because ideally, if the president were to say, go and do A and B, if it's against the law, you're supposed to respectfully decline. And as a minimum, and the worst case, you tender your resignation.
All right.
Is that what we really have going on?
All right. Well, one final question. You talked about not accepting mediocrity, and you talked excellently well about the NSA. What do you think should be the time limit given to these service chiefs in terms of, making the security architecture favorable to Nigerians? What should be the time limit? You say we shouldn't accept mediocrity, we shouldn't accept low performances. So what do you think is the, 2 years, 1 year? When do you think they should have the ball rolling?
Well, for me, I think 6 months is enough to know whether they're doing well or not. In fact, in 3 months, you will be able to see the direction that the different services and agencies are going, and whether we have some kind of cohesion, whether we have some convergence in terms of the entire national security architecture. If they're able to work together under the Chief of Defense Staff, under the NSA to go together. 3 months you should be able to see the signs. But 6 months you would have known whether there's anything new they're bringing to the table. But for me, within the first 1 month, I would expect that such heads of services would have presented their needs, just like you had the needs assessment of educational institutions years ago, to the NSA, to the commander-in-chief via the NSA. I need ABC as a minimum to survive. If you want me to do well, if you don't give me ABC in terms of the manpower that we have, in terms of the allowances and training, accommodation, and what have you, the cash ration allowance, I cannot succeed. In fact, accept my resignation ahead of time. But if you give me this, I assure you that in 2 months, in 3 months, you'll see results.
All right, thank you very much. If you want to go, who's a security expert, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
All right, do have yourself a good day. All right, now to you listening, let's get your take on the new service chiefs. What do you make of it? Do you think it is the right time for a change of guard? And looking at the portfolio or the resume of these individuals, I mean, very quality resume. I could not read it on the show because it's lengthy. One person's resume is lengthy enough to take 1 hour. Oh, I'm just exaggerating, but lengthy enough nonetheless. So you can go online and you see it. It's all over the net. But when you look at the portfolios, when you look at the resumes, they are, well decorated, well educated. Do you think it is time for a change of guard? How do you, and what do you expect? How do you see it, and what do you expect coming? How do I put it now? What do you expect from these new service chiefs in the coming weeks, in the coming months, and in the coming years? I'd like to hear from you. 08179230002, 08179230003. And WhatsApp and text messages, you go to the number 0809 0306416. Hello, 92.3 Nigeria Info.
Hello, good evening, Canada.
Yeah, good evening to you. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Chief Comrade Ayembre.
All right, welcome, Ayembre.
Canada, I think for me, it's a very good one to appoint a new service chief. I want to appeal to the new service chief that has been appointed that they should go down to the rank and file. They should bring themselves down to the rank and file. They will succeed. But if they stay in high and mighty to give a command, why they don't go to the scene of crime? They always stay at their glass house there, and at the end of the day, the people come and tell them some cook story. We will still fall back to what we are experiencing today. If not, if they go down, I think within 3 months, we'll have a robust security in this country. And for the former director of anti-graft, I think it's a good one for him to become the NSCDC. We'll have a robust national security advisor. I think it's a good one, Rubadu. I think it's a good one. Because for me, Rubadu know the in and out of this country, and they know where the insecurity taking place. Even when he talk about anti-graft, he could be able to advise our president that, look, this area needs to be checked. I think it's a good one. Thank you, and God bless you.
All right, thank you very much, Braid. Thank you for your time. Aliru Speed on Facebook says, this is almost the most important sector of man's desire. The new service chiefs should, as a matter of urgency, strive to live above expectations because more is expected of them due to the high level of insecurity in our country. May God help them to discharge their duties with great devotion. And Samuel Ewok says, security sector is one of the most critical sectors of the economy. When there is peace, automatically prosperity and progress set in. I wish to see a drastic and positive change in our security system following the appointment of the new security chiefs by President Tinubu. The new security chiefs must be dedicated and committed to the restoration of peace and tranquility in Nigeria. They should be willing to work void of sentiment of any kind. When once that is done, investors will come to Nigeria to invest, and that will bring job opportunities. Farmers will go back to their farm, and there will be food sufficiency, and generally the economy will blossom. People, especially the northerners, will be sleeping with their two eyes closed. I pray that the appointment brings total peace. Kudos to President Tinubu. All right, thank you very much there. Let's see, what do we have here? This one says, okay, I'm trying to get it loading. All right, I'm having issues getting that message. I'm going to go to the phone lines now. 92.3 Nigeria Info. What's your name? Where are you calling in
Hello?
from? Yeah, welcome.
Yes, Tuji Kumari.
Welcome.
Yes, I welcome the change in the service. Service chiefs, they are all qualified, but we should not think of their academic qualifications. It depends on the individuals, just as it applies to judiciary. In the judges, there are some who are called juries.
There are some who are what? Sorry, I didn't get that. There are some who are what? Hello? I didn't hear you. Said there are some who are what? Hello?
I'm talking about technicalities in these service chiefs.
Okay.
They can work, but they all not work in the same way. It depends on the personalities involved.
It depends on the personalities. Okay.
And let the personalities bring out what they have in their inner body and use. Because even soldiers some are more qualified than others. They will all work. So let them do all that they have, and they will help us.
All right then. All right, thank you very much for your time there. I barely heard what you were trying to say, but thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time. Keep your calls coming in. I've got a commercial break coming up shortly, but then again, the question is: Are you expectant now that we've got new service chiefs? Are you expectant? Someone says national security advisor should have been given to a retired army officer not below the rank of lieutenant general. There is bound to be issues with the directive from manager Sir Festus Digbani. But I just told you not too long ago that during Abacha's time, he was a military ruler. He was the head of state at the time. It was given to an ex-police officer. Same thing under IBB's time. And also, I think when it was the National Security Organization, an ex-police officer also ruled, not the military, not an army officer, none of that. All right, commercial break coming up. The open season, we'll talk more about this. What do you make about the change of guard? I'm talking about the service chiefs. How would you also rate the outgone, service chiefs? Do you think that they made any improvement to the security architecture of Nigeria? Do stay tuned.